In this third part of the series of HRD, my experience of HRD in banks, I like to share my experience of working on Khandelwal committee, number one. Number two, my experience of working in with a couple of banks in Sri Lanka, developing competency mapping with one of them. Very interesting methodology we used, and with another on training and development as well as introducing 360-degree feedback. And in addition, my comments on assessment and development centers as we implemented them. In one case, very indirectly through a committee approach, and in another case, actually, TVRLS as an organization helping the bank identify competencies, develop its own competency model, develop exercises, train internal assessors, and carry through the entire uh, exercise of assessing the potential and helping people to be groomed for leadership positions. First, I must mention it was a great privilege, honor, and a great experience to be a member of the Khandelwal Committee. We submitted our report in the year 2010, June, and the leader of the team, in fact, I think this is designed and actually managed by Dr. Khandelwal, and that's why very appropriately it is called as Khandelwal Committee, because Dr. Khandelwal has had so much of experience as a banker and has done a marvelous job. I assume that he is the one who chose the members of the committee, although the committee was appointed by the Department of Banking of the Ministry of Finance. The committee consisted of Khandelwal as the chairman, and then there were other members. One of them is a IT professor from Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. Another is an executive director from ICICI Bank, myself, and another is the chairman of another bank. So there were five of us, and we were ably assisted by a senior experienced person from Bank of Baroda, and IBM, the Indian Banks Association, facilitated this. It was a great experience in the sense, even today, I think that the Khandelwal Committee report stands out as one of the, in my view, the best HR reports. We recommended a whole lot of things, including, I think, the entire view of HR, the need for professionalizing HR in banking, the need for developing future leaders, the high rate of retirements, and therefore, how do you work out with succession planning, and also suggested that 360-degree feedback should be used as a leadership development tool. It's a public document, and anybody who is interested can access it on the net and through the ministry and other sources. So I'm not going into the details of it, but I must say that it was a great report. We spent about 6 months touring around. We went to each one of the public sector banks, had presentations from them, and that was the time just before that at IIM Ahmedabad. I happened to be helping Steel Authority of India, along with my colleague Niharika Vora and others, to institute HR awards in the manufacturing sector. We developed a very comprehensive questionnaire, and that experience helped, and also my book on HR audit and HR scorecard. Putting all these, the committee, I think, finalized a very exhaustive questionnaire and sent it out to all the banks, and we collected a lot of information about these organizations. It's all mentioned in the report. It's for I would strongly recommend even any other HR person not associated with banks to read this and get an idea. Now, coming to some of the professional issues, the first issue I'd like to mention is about performance management. Even today, I think there is no stability of performance management system, traditionally called as appraisal. For banks, I think it is more appropriate to call it as more of an appraisal system, because banks are constantly struggling to improve performance practically on a day to day basis. There are no easy solutions for this, and I think the banks suffer the same kind of issues that across the world any organization suffers when it comes to appraisal. difficulties in quantifying. Of course, banks have progressed quite a bit in terms of defining roles which are easily quantifiable versus those that are difficult to quantify and so on. So I appreciate the kind of approach the ministry has formulated as well as the banks have been struggling with. I will only have to say the following, which are in tune with my academic writings. Number one, the most important thing in performance management is who owns performance. I think it is high time, besides the bank, every individual should be made owner of performance, which means individuals should play a lot more active part in planning or having a say in the planning of performance, in reviewing performance, improving performance, using a variety of methodologies. Rewards are always tricky, therefore, I don't want to say anything more on that. I think whatever Khandelwal committee has said is the most appropriate part of it. But more importantly, I like to say something about competency mapping. I think competency mapping has become a little bit of a the thing to do in the last couple of decades, particularly in the last one decade. Competency mapping simply suggests that every role requires a set of competencies, some of them unique to it and some of them cut across, and therefore these competencies for each role need to be identified and stated in terms of whatever is the purpose of the job, who are all the stakeholders of the job, internal and external customers, and what are the key tasks to be performed, and most importantly, key activities. Activities is the most important thing in my view, which is not done by any of the organizations, banks or no banks, it doesn't matter. I think when it comes to breaking down KRAs or KPAs into activities, that is where most people lose their patience and write very generic kind of terms. I think this is the biggest problems in competency mapping, because without listing critical activities, you cannot identify knowledge, attitudes, skills, values, traits, and self concept, etc., required to perform a given role, which we are calling as competency mapping. I strongly believe that in a bank, if there are 100 roles or 250 roles or whatever are the roles, each role should have a separate competency map. Competency map means listing all the purpose of the job, reporting relationships, key tasks and activities, and or then knowledge, attitude, skills that are required. Which would mean that for each role, it will almost become a 10 to 15 page. I'm just indicating pages as one of the indicators. 10 to 15 page document. And one nowadays with the IT available, I think each role description or competency map, competency profile, whatever you call it, of each role can be fed into the computer. Now, for example, if you have, let us say, 1,000 branches, these branches can be categorized into different categories of branches, and competencies can be mapped for each one of the categories. Having mapped that, I would strongly recommend each branch should have its own list of competencies in which 90% may be similar across similar branches, but at least 10% unique to that particular environment in which the branch is located. This requires very marginal extra effort, but people who do competency mapping should be thorough in competency mapping. I've had a very interesting experience with one of the Sri Lankan banks. Actually, in the year 2002, I was invited by the Human Resource Association of Sri Lanka to help them to to decide awards for those who have done outstanding work in HR. So I spent almost a month in Colombo. We constituted again a committee. We visited every organization, and among them, every single bank in Colombo. I have had the good opportunity with the help of postgraduate institute of management. We visited, and that was a great experience for him. I was very impressed with the way banks have been functioning. I think every bank, they use it to start with the bank anthem. We'll talk about their objectives. I think very well worked out kind of systems they have had. So after this experience, one of the banks contacted us to do competency mapping for the bank. I said, it's not possible for me to come there and then interview all people and do competency mapping. Let me train a group of your people. So they chose about 15 to 20 of their managers to be trained in competency mapping. Even before I went to, we from the TVRLS went to train them, we requested them to send their KPIs and gave them a framework of breaking the KPIs into activities. So before we went there, for at least for a group of roles, we had the objectives, internal and external customers listed out, and then the key tasks and activities. So after that, we conducted a 3-day workshop to train these internal facilitators. And 6 months later, I mean, they were all given the task. Each one was put into a team of 2 people. So 2 to 3 people constituted a team. They were given the roles. So 6 months later, I said, I'm going to come back and you will complete the competency profiling of all the roles in your bank. So 6 months later, I mean, it took a couple of months more. They went on sending their data to me. 6 months later, when I went, I think there was an excellent job that was done by this team. And in fact, I think they not only identified competencies, they changed their HR information system and started using it for training and development and so on. So with work with this particular bank, which is a small bank, helped us to understand that this is something with very little outside intervention, in-house resources can be dealt. And I'm so happy that we left a group of trainers there. Another bank wanted us to do 360-degree feedback. My experience of doing with in one of the nationalized banks in India, 360-degree feedback was not very happy, because in banks they are accustomed to rate each other in a very positive way. And when I attempted on a 6-point scale, a 55-item questionnaire I developed to assess the effectiveness of a regional manager and sent out to all the branch managers, they found it very difficult to rate their regional manager anything below 5 on a 6-point scale, and it became very difficult to differentiate. So I thought that normally in banking people like to rate each other as excellent, and it's difficult therefore to have a 360-degree feedback. But my experience with a large bank in Sri Lanka was different. I think there was differentiation. People were able to do a great job, and it was a great success as a leadership development tool. However, I am always cautious that when, even if it is anonymous feedback in banking industry and in public sector, 360-degree feedback as a tool of promotions, etc., will create a hell of a lot of issues. Therefore, I have always recommended, including in the Administrative Reforms Commission report on civil services, use 360 as a leadership development tool. The data should not be collected or owned by the government. It is owned by the feedback seeker, and that is the most important thing. Otherwise, 360 feedback is not likely to work at all. So this is one experience of 360-degree feedback. When it comes to assessment center, I have already narrated earlier the experience we have had with State Bank of India. I think it was not called assessment center. It was simply called a promotion exercise with external people, and we were almost 4 external people who were there, and we spent for each group of about 10 people 2 full days, put them through group discussions, put them through presentations, and put them through individual interactions. But subsequently, I am not sure how the banks have taken this up, but normally our recommendation is that you should try a development center to build leadership capabilities. And to that extent, we have already put our recommendations in Kandelwal committee. But I must say that we have done a great job working when a private sector bank asked us to do assessment centers. We have done competency mapping for them, developed models, trained internal people, and ultimately put it into action. And I'm told that it has helped phenomenally in terms of identifying competent people within the bank. I think training and development is a great source, but a lot of innovations are required in the banking system. I would say that we need to move out of the traditional methods and have a lot more field and experience based and research oriented training. Training is a very powerful tool in banks. Any day I would encourage innovative way of looking at training. I think organizations like State Bank of India, Bank of Baroda have been trying variety of methods. I would strongly encourage this kind of a thing. Thank you for listening to me. I think that is what I could communicate in a short period. All the best from TVRLS.